right, so I think we're good to go. Welcome everyone. Again, apologies for the delay. We don't know what happened with Zoom, but we're all here now. Welcome to the AIA Long Island Chapter monthly event. My name is Graciela Carrillo. I'm the chapter's president. Today, we're happy to host the State and Future of Assisted Living and Senior Housing Real Estate presented by David Mammina, AIA. But before introducing our speaker, I would like to make a few announcements regarding the chapter. Next month, on September 9th, we will be hosting our 30th annual John Notaro Golf Outing, which contributes to our scholarship program. And then on September 16th, the Women in Architecture and the chapter are hosting Own Your Value, Secure Your Future lecture. In October 15, we will be hosting the 56 Archie Awards ceremony. We're very happy with the entries that we submitted. We got over 80 entries, and we're very happy that we're gonna be able to celebrate Long Island architects and architecture in person. So just keep posted for those events. And then finally, we will host in collaboration with Nassau BOSES, a series of lectures to launch the Long Island School Design and Planning Conference. They will be held in September and October. So please stay tuned for those dates also. And now I would like to introduce our speaker, David Mammina, AIA. David is the Vice President, Deputy Real Estate Market Director, and Director of Healthcare and Senior Living at the H2M Group with corporate offices in Melville. And we also have Ken Geringer, AIA from H2M. Ken is also the chapter's treasurer, and he will be assisting David with the question and answers. Just to let everybody know, we have questions and answers box at the bottom of your screen. Please submit them as we go during the presentation, and then Ken is going to go through the questions and ask them to David at the time that you submitted. So please feel free to have any type of conversation on the Q&A box. And now I'm going to turn it over to David.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And thank you very much, Graciela. I appreciate it. I'm happy to speak with everyone tonight. And I guess the format that we have is we had done this as a as an actual webinar, and we had several other people that were related to the healthcare industry, attorneys and operators, and myself. So it's not a straight PowerPoint, but I do have just a couple of slides, so you don't have to look at me all the time. And the way that I've got it set up is I'm just going to do some statistics that might surprise some people. Maybe they won't. I'm going to then get into design and the directions that design is going. And then I'm going to get into what are some of the innovations, what are things that I think we're all seeing more and more in different places that we go to. And then what are things that we can recommend to clients, either for existing buildings or for new buildings. I also think that a lot of this, while we are talking about a very frail population in assisted living buildings, in senior living facilities, in nursing homes, it still applies, from really any age group, through senior citizens. I mean, if you go, onto, the National Emergency Services Board, their websites and things, they give all the statistics from literally from babies, up through, people who are, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And it affects everyone. So, no one is bulletproof on this. So, even if you were planning a new office building, or a restaurant, especially where you've got a lot of people in close quarters, theaters, whatever, all of those things can still apply, to those. But, For myself as an architect, healthcare has been, specialty that, that I have done a lot of, and specifically, within that, nursing homes, assisted living buildings, and senior housing developments, which could be 55 and older, communities that we see going up all over. But in terms of statistics, right now there have been 23.9 million cases that were diagnosed worldwide. And that's staggering. And those are only the ones that were diagnosed. I know I have personal friends, who had COVID, but just never went to the doctor and they wrote it out. Of that 23.9 million, 5.79 are from the United States. So United States is a very big country, but it's not as heavily populated in many parts of it. And we are the country that actually ended up having the most amount of cases. And while it has cooled off, as they say within the newspapers and other data written, it is still active. Within the United States, we had 178,000 deaths, and there were 435,000 cases. So, that's 435,000 cases in New York, and 32,495 deaths. So it's 20% of the people that had contracted the disease died. So it's a very, very high standard. 8 out of every 10 are over the age of 65, which would mean that from that 435,000, from the 178,000 deaths, 142,000 of them were people that were in nursing homes, assisted living buildings, or senior housing complexes. So, I mean, that's kind of staggering. I mean, 8 out of 10 are people over the age of 65. I'm 67. I don't think about, getting COVID or being more prone to it. But, as you get older, if we like it or not, we become more susceptible to it. I'm going to show a slide regarding nursing homes, but in my own personal opinion, while the governor has been very vocal, on this, I look at it from the perspective, and I know that there are colleagues that look at it in the same way, that actually the laws that were put into place by the New York State Department of Health, at his request, actually helped to boost those number of people that died, because what the governor had said is that hospitals can release persons with COVID to nursing homes, and the nursing homes have to accept those people. And then a few weeks later, he said that nursing homes are the ground zero for this pandemic, and these are the most vulnerable places to be. But he was the one who made that decision. I mean, we had those Navy ships that sailed in that were temporary hospitals, and other temporary hospitals were set up in public auditoriums and things that were supposed to take those COVID patients, and never did. So at this point, people are afraid to put their loved ones into nursing homes, into assisted living buildings, and even into senior housings. The census is off dramatically as I talk with clients, especially in the nursing home side. And without getting, overly dramatic, I'd spoken, with a client in the middle of the real height of this, and she had asked me to give her a call, and when I called her back, she said, "David, I really can't talk now." She said, "The only way I can describe it is I'm up to my neck in bodies here, and we're trying to deal with this as best as we can." So people are avoiding nursing homes, assisted living, and senior housing. And the problem is that in all of those buildings, they're designed in order to encourage socialization and people being able to get together and play cards and have dinner together and basically enjoy each other's company. So with the census being down, then the revenue coming into those buildings, is also dropping off, and that's something that the government's going to have to deal with. But what I'm going to do, and I just did it incorrectly, is I'm going to just share my screen. As I said, I've only got 4 slides. That's the one that I want. Is that working, Graziella?
No,
No, so I did it
just
wrong.
go to share and you'll pick the screen that you want to share.
Okay, so I'm going to go back down here to share screen, and then that should be the screen. Yes, no?
No.
All right, we're going to try one more time because this is going to be important. Okay, so I'm clicking on,
On share
oh,
screen.
I did that. So that says share.
Yeah, where's that? Yeah, perfect.
Okay, so now
You
you've
can
got my
just
screen.
enlarge that screen. There,
Okay,
there you go. Perfect.
all right.
Thank you.
So essentially this was a New York Times article that was entitled "A Powerful Case for Smaller Nursing Homes." And it mentions not only nursing homes, but of course assisted living buildings and senior housing. And I mean, they're showing, grandma there, and she's waving from the window at her family. It's her birthday, and you can see the car reflected across the street with balloons and things on it. And um, that's the state of the state right now. I mean, my own mother-in-law is in a facility that I did, has essentially not been out of her room for 5 months. I mean, that's a long, long time. So the answer to it is really looking at the way we've been designing these buildings and designing them in a way that they can be smaller, and that they can function where you can still have socialization, but not as many people, as we would have, rather than having 50, 60, 70 people at a dining seating. We're laying these buildings out now in such a way that they've become like little communities. And if anybody is interested in it, there's a not-for-profit group that's called the Greenhouse Project. It has nothing to do with a greenhouse as we know it, but essentially they have had the philosophy that by creating smaller communities, people tend to live longer, they tend to have a better lifestyle, and they've been building these sort of buildings for a very, very long time. And when you look at their statistics in terms of people who contract the disease, and those who survive and those who pass away, on the survival side it's very high. On the fatality side, it's very low. So what we have been doing, and I'm going to bring over another slide. Okay, so let me see if I can zoom this up. Oh, I did it for a second. There we go. This would be a typical first floor. Can everybody see the plan that I have? Did that work?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. So I mean, this is the first floor of a typical assisted living building that we would do, and this one is ready to start construction. So we actually ended up delaying the construction drawings for about a month in order that we could make modifications to the floor plans and some of the mechanical systems in order to try to speak to what the problems are within it, and to look at these smaller communities. So if we were going to look just at what does this building normally look like and how does it function, I mean, you can see, a typical lobby in here and reception in here. And, you know, the dining room is over on the side. There are courtyards where, you know, people can, you know, can mingle, courtyard with a swimming pool, there's billiards, there's a bistro, arts and crafts, a card game, a cinema, a performing arts center. So all of these things being done so that people can come together and make the choices that we make, you know, every day. We decide what we're going to do. Should we go and get our hair done? Do we feel like going, you know, to a restaurant for lunch? Do we want to meet friends and, you know, and play cards? We have, you know, a library. We have a fitness center. There's a small wellness center. The issue is that that's not working now, and these spaces are completely empty in every single building that I've ever done, and that's dozens and dozens and dozens. And I deal with, you know, with these owners on a, you know, on a regular basis. And, you know, right now they're mandated by the state that no one is allowed out of their rooms.
David, I have a question.
Sure.
Are smaller facilities economically viable to operate?
We'll come to that. That's an
Okay.
excellent question. And, you know, and I'll answer that partially because the greenhouse project is not something that's new. It's something that's been around for probably at least 15 years. And the problem with the question, with the answering the question, is that the ability in this part of the world to set up that sort of a facility is difficult from the perspective of land and construction costs. You know, in terms of the financial viability to operate it, that can be made to be reasonable because there's going to be less staff, and they tended to link these together. But there certainly are issues regarding maintenance people and, you know, kitchen staff, you know, and, you know, it's a not-for-profit group, the Greenhouse Project. So from, you know, from their perspective, they, you know, they do have a better, you know, a better way of handling it. So what we're looking at in here is how do we try to answer things like this, you know, within newer facilities. And as I said, this is something, you know, that's currently ready to go into construction. But what we have done in an effort to try to answer that, because otherwise the buildings end up laying fallow, you know, as I had said before, the conclusion of what I was saying regarding, you know, what the governor has put out there as mandates is that you're safer staying home, you know, than being in a facility which theoretically is going to give you care. But what we've done, you know, with this building is that we've split it up into quadrants. So you can see where the red lines go. So each one of these quadrants has either 10 or 12 residents that would live, you know, within that. So they would be sleeping, you know, in the rooms that are directly adjacent, but then they would be spending their day, you know, within this, within the pod. So there's a TV and lounge area over here. These are multi-purpose spaces in here that would be used for arts and crafts, for games and activity. There is dining, you know, that's over on the side. There is a small kitchen area in here that can be used as either a demonstration type kitchen. You know, residents are, you know, are encouraged to cook. Not in the way that we would think that they're not cooking for the whole building, you know, but if someone wants to bake a cake, there are, you know, facilities where, you know, where they can do that within the overall facility. So the thought, you know, being that these people are still living within this pod of the building, but they are separated so that staff can be watching them. They can be seeing the symptoms of, you know, of COVID or any other type of flu that, you know, that might be going around and being carried in, you know, by staff or by visitors. But at the same time, then there is, a larger town square area. There is a wellness center, as I said, up in here, which are medical offices, and the individual people within the pods can be brought for larger group activities, up into those spaces. There is a hair salon that's up in that area, as well. So what we're trying to do is break down the way that that the buildings, are used, but still creating, a quality of life. Each one of these pods has access to a courtyard. They would not be used simultaneously, but people have the ability to to get outside. I mean, if you think of that photo that we saw on the slide before, and as I had said regarding my own mother-in-law, she's been in her room for 5 months. I mean, with no ability to leave the room. Meals are brought to her. The only contact that she really has with anyone is housekeeping, when they come in, and staff nursing, when they come in. And those people are at very high risk. And, we'll talk about that, and how we see the world potentially changing even to work, around these types of things.
David, I have another question.
Sure.
Are the smaller units designed for dementia residents?
This particular unit that we are looking at is a dementia unit. So yes, they are designed, in that, in that manner, specifically. If you see the word MC or the letters MC on that, that's memory care, in there. And when we would be looking at other floors of this building, those floors would also be divided up. We never have a nurse's station in an assisted living building. We have them, in nursing homes, but we don't have them in assisted living buildings, and we certainly don't have them in senior living buildings. But we are now putting, generally we'll do this kind of a square layout, and then this kind of a T shape. And there would be a nurse's station on the upper floors in here. There'd be a nurse's station in here. There would be a nurse's station, in here, so that those residents then can be observed. And it does mean additional staffing, but the state is realizing that additional staffing costs money, and there's got to be a mechanism for for those operators to be reimbursed. Especially that now, as I'm talking to the operators, and I'll make one other point, on that is, also is that, their census is off as much as 25%. So, if you have, a nursing home that might have 300, beds, 25% of that, at $400 a day is a whole lot of money. If you have an assisted living building that's going to be smaller, 200 beds being a maximum, and you're operating at similar cost to that, it's very, very significant. This one operator was telling me yesterday that for the first time in 5 months, their COVID ratio is at 0. So they are now permitted by the state to start to intermingle a little bit the general population. But what he was saying is that as soon as there is a single person who either comes into the facility who has COVID, or someone who contracts it from someone who comes into the facility to visit them, said then we start all over again. We go right back to ground zero, and everybody goes back to their rooms. And it's an extremely serious problem when we talk about quality of life and the ability, for people to socialize and be able to share meals. And so, even a little bit more drastic. Can everybody see that screen now, the one that I just flipped to?
Yes, we can. But before you go ahead, can I ask a question?
Sure.
You don't mind? So going back to the other slide that you had there, you have those like subzones within the building.
Yes.
Especially on the bottom side. So I guess, as we know, HVAC systems play a really important role in
Yes.
helping with COVID. So I guess you tie in, how did you work with the HVAC system for those subzones? Each of them
Yes,
will
that's
have its own?
no, that's a good question, and you're the president, so we'll let you ask it now before I get to that. But now I'll be talking further about that. But um, in this building, we have split up the air conditioning and the heating systems in there in order to serve those individual pods and give them their individual control. We've done the same thing in the upper areas by selecting, how we want to do that, how we think we should do it. Because, right now everything, is, I don't want to say it's a guess, but it's a guess. We're just not sure. But we've made educated guesses. And of course at construction expense, we are installing systems within the air conditioning and the heating systems that that I'll come to, and we'll talk about that, because I think when it comes right down to it, the design is extremely important, but it's the behind the scenes part of the design that nobody sees, that really becomes so essential. I mean, more than important, it's essential. Otherwise you're inadvertently continuing to spread the disease around the entire facility. So I will come to that, and if I haven't answered it the whole way, I would certainly invite you to, to please ask that again. So in the facility that we're looking at here, I mean, this particular building, is a relatively tall building. It's a 16-story building, but the way that it was very deliberately designed, and someone asked a question regarding memory care. This building originally started off as a memory care building. It's in Manhattan, so it's very high end, in that, people have a whole lot of money. But, the thought here was, though, to pay attention to the ability to segregate to segregate populations, because in this building, they're not only going to be doing memory care, they're going to be doing regular assisted living, they're going to be doing well seniors, and they're also going to be doing on the lower floors of the building drug rehab, because that's also become something which is reached a catastrophic level, and those are people who are extremely at risk, because these are people who are not really paying a whole lot of attention to anything other than their ability to obtain their drugs, and are not even in a presence of mind where they're conscious of of these things. So this building is designed to serve many different populations, and again, the rooms are ring the outside of the building, and then the center of the building is set up, and I did not put into here deliberately a furnished plan, but again, in here, this is kind of like you step out of your bedroom and you're in your house. Your dining room is over here. This lounge area in here is is set up as a living room. In here, we have an activities, area, which can be games and other arts and crafts kinds of things. We have a quiet room over here, which really is set up, as a TV room, over in there, and these are individual studios, in here. In terms of the buildings that I personally do, the majority of them are all done as single bedded rooms, either as studios, as one bedrooms, and then there's a small sampling of 2-bedroom units, but most of the time that's if someone has a nurse, who is coming in to to take care of them. But again, this even in a high-rise building is showing that essentially this population will spend their time within this. There is a small outdoor space here On the top of this building, there's a large activity space, up there. In the case of, of this population, they can be brought as a group, up to that area. And we'll talk about disinfecting, and different ways that, that's then dealt with, for these individual populations. I'm going to click to the next slide, which basically...
David, I have one question before you do that.
Sure.
Is there a service elevator for that type
Yes.
of plan?
What we're doing in this building is, originally we had a service elevator that was right here, and that was pre-COVID. And what the owners decided to do here, as they were beginning to look at the costs, I mean, this is an $80 million building. They decided that they would take the service elevator out because the population of the building is relatively small, comparatively speaking, and that they would designate one elevator as a passenger elevator and the other elevator as a service elevator. So this would be the way. And if I showed the cellar and subcellar level, of the building, you would see that everything is designed on those two levels, around this car, which would end up being the service car. As you can see from, the X's that we also well know as, that means it's an elevator. These are all hospital-sized cars. They're oversized because we need to be able to move people in them, and we need to be able to move a lot of food and linens and things through the, through the building. Also, a majority of your population, in these buildings are on, they utilize walkers. You're not going to see wheelchairs, in these buildings, because this is not a, a wheelchair population building. Where if we were to look at a nursing home, in a nursing home, about 80% of the population, are in wheelchairs. And in those populations, everything is on a single floor. But still, even in a nursing home, the regulations, call for 40 persons on a floor. So 40 persons on a floor, as opposed to having 11 as there are in this building, and those other quads that we looked at before split up into populations of 10, the amount of people that they're in contact with is significantly less than, what we would see, in a nursing home, where you do have 40 people, in a dining room, and you have 40 people, in the group activity areas. So, it's, in those buildings, there is always a service car. And in nursing homes that we are doing now, there is always a service car. When we do these as low-rise buildings, which the other building was a low-rise building, if I zoom in, you're going to see that there is an elevator right here. This is where the deliveries come in. The kitchen is in the cellar below that. Excuse me, the kitchen is adjacent in this building. So the kitchen is right here. And, what that does is it enables them to, the way that we have this set up, it would enable them to serve the dining room. It would enable them to serve this memory care unit, but it also then would enable them to use this car in order to move through the entire building. So no residents have use of that car, in there. I realize I'm throwing a whole lot, out. So, whatever questions, I'm very happy, to answer them. For those of you who would do not even necessarily a building such as an assisted living building, a nursing home, but if you're doing really any kind of healthcare, and healthcare doesn't mean, adding a new cancer wing, onto a Northwell hospital, because, quite honestly, that would go beyond, what are my capabilities in terms of specialties. But, there are a lot of what I call doc in a box. I mean, you see them, kind of, all over, opening up, and you're seeing, the hospitals doing a lot of off-campus facilities, that are much smaller, and they kind of open the door to, to smaller firms, because I mean, even if we look at H2M, we're a very big company, but we're split up into different design studios. And, Ken's design studio, handles, the healthcare work, or a good part of the healthcare work that we, that we do. And these are the guidelines that you're going to have to become familiar with. And the FGI guidelines, which are the Facilities Guidelines Institute, started off by the American Institute of Architects putting that together. This one is strictly for residential health and healthcare facilities and support facilities. So an assisted living building falls into this, but there's also another book for hospitals that stands alone. It used to all be in one. Now they split it up into two books. Also, while we all have to comply with the New York State Building Code, we also have to comply with NFPA, which is National Fire Protection Association, and their life safety code. And that is especially true when you are looking at, that off-site healthcare facility that we as smaller architects might have the ability to do. And I mention that because in all of the literature, that now is coming out, and the magazine articles that we read, the FGI right now and NFPA are supposed to be issuing a white paper by October 1st. And that white paper is going to be filled with code recommendations, which I'm sure probably a majority of them will become parts of the New York State Building Code, excuse me, the FGI guidelines, and NFPA. I mean, how do building code changes happen? They usually happen because of catastrophes. And, when we saw things happen after the World Trade Center, we saw a lot of things happen after Superstorm Sandy. And I think we're going to see a lot of things that are going to happen that are going to answer things like Graziella had asked, in terms of, well, what do I do now? And what are going to be my requirements? And, I guess talking about, those kinds of things and what are projected to be, guideline changes that we are going to see within the FGI guidelines, specifically on a lot of this, because the FGI guidelines have a lot to do with the way you operate your building, as well as the way you construct it. And NFPA deals with construction, as the New York State Building Code does. But I think some of the solutions that we are going to be looking at is, how is access to the building going to happen? And the popular opinion seems to be that people are going to make appointments, to come in and, and visit, with their families, and, those 6-foot discs that we see on the floor that are going to separate us. Well, you're going to have a 2 o'clock appointment, to visit, with your mother, your father, your husband, your wife, whomever it might be. And, as you come in as a visitor, you will then be given a health check. And, that health check is going to be reinforced with what are, known, through the industry and becoming known as Ppe Stations, which is personal protective equipment. And you'll have your temperature taken. You will have a body scan done that will also see if your temperature within normal ranges, and you will be given a mask. You'll be given gloves, potentially face shields, depending upon how far these agencies are going to feel that you would go. And then from there, the thought process is going to be is that there's going to be a wayfinding system, whether it's periodic divider walls or some other aesthetic kind of a treatment, or something that will become aesthetic. It could be done with planter separating walls. These are all things that I've seen, in magazines, in articles, for this, and in other webinars that I've gone to, and they'll guide you and direct you to the elevators, to a dining area. Um, when we get to, let's take something as simple, as the elevator, where most of of COVID, is transmitted mostly by touch, but also, and a lot of it comes, from, is transmitted by aspiration, basically by coughing, sneezing, that sort of thing. And therefore, the face masks and the importance of them. But there are things being developed, right as we speak. As you're waiting in that line, I mean, there are antimicrobial mats that have been developed, so that it's taking that virus and it's taking it off of your your shoes, so you're not moving it through the facility. When you get into the elevator, they're working on audio versions of telling the elevator what floor you want to go to. As a stopgap measure, some of the smaller facilities are just having their elevator stop at every floor. So, if you have a 3-story building, it's going to be open at the first floor. It's going to open at the second floor. It's going to open at the third floor. It's going to open again at the second floor. It's going to open at the first floor. And they'll just continue to move up and down so that you don't have to touch the buttons. We're going to talk about ultraviolet light. And ultraviolet light, is something that is going to be a large answer to a lot of the issues, at hand. But ultraviolet light is also dangerous in a way. That's the sunlight that gives us our sunburns and our nice suntans that we like so much, but we know that it damages our skin, as well. But there are ultraviolet lights that are currently being developed that will sit at the edges of the elevator cabs, at the ceiling. And when the elevators are not occupied, the ultraviolet lights will come on and they'll wash those walls. Because so much is transmitted by touch. And it's interesting, the surfaces that you select, are so important. Finishes like carpeting. It's going to be a thing of the past because it's going to hold on to, that COVID virus. Vinyl wall coverings and fabrics, even though, they can be plastic, they're, if they've got any kind of a texture, they're holding on, to those, to that virus. It's, I don't know the reason why, but copper seems to be the most resistant material to the COVID virus. And it will die purportedly within 10 minutes of being on the copper surface. So you're going to be seeing handrails that are going to be coming out with a thin copper, covering, on them, and switches, and things that that would be touchable surfaces. So we'll see those those sorts of things that are going to be coming about. And the staffs, I think, are staff people are the ones who are most at at risk to the built environment. And I think that there'll be a lot of shift changing that's going to happen with staff. There's also there will also be a lot of the environmental perception to the visitors, the residents, and the and the staff, that everybody's doing the most that they can do. Seeing these disinfecting stations throughout the throughout the facility will be very important. But coming more specifically to the what are the things that we're going to see within these codes. The optimal humidity target ranges are between 40 and 60% humidity. And so I mean, right now when we're in the summertime, I mean, this is not a good time to be in a building without proper HVAC. When we start to reach points that go below 40%, which we can in the winter, again, you start to end up in an environment that becomes becomes hostile. So there, there are a number of things that can be done. Polar ionization, is, basically it's a system, whereby the ionization forces the viruses to bond, to each other, and when they bond to each other, they essentially kill each other. To have within the ductwork ultraviolet lighting systems where we as people are not, are not exposed to that. Having enhanced filtration systems, I'm sure everybody's heard about that, having HEPA filtration systems, that acronym is HEPA. And another very effective way to deal with it is by having enhanced outdoor air introduced into your HVAC systems and your ductwork. The only negative of that is that we have an energy code that we're supposed to be, paying attention to and respecting. And, that energy code is going to say, well, gee, the more outdoor air that we're introducing, the more that we're going to have to temper, cold air in the winter, and deal with hot air in the summer. The more temperature and humidity adjustments that we're going to have to make in order to decrease the growth and the lifespan, of those viruses and the bacteria. There are air scrubbers, and the air scrubbers are generally ozone generators, and ozone is what we all know, that ozone is, and that's what protects us, from those ultraviolet waves. But it will also act as ionization, and that can go into the ductwork within the building, and it will disinfect, as the air moves through that. So there are any number of HVAC systems that will deal with that. The polar ionization, as ozone is the most energy efficient, in that. There are also other things that have been developed. There are aftermarket nanoseptic plastics. Okay, I didn't know what that was either, but they're basically shaped like a door pull, that we would pull on an aluminum and glass door, and it's made of a material. Many of them will be copper on the outside of them, is the prediction, and they're surface protection, so that they're self-cleaning barriers. Touchless hardware, of course, that we're all seeing that all over the place. We're seeing, bathrooms being outfitted with automatic, water that is turned on and off, just by photo sensors. We're seeing doors that are, and this is the low-hanging fruit stuff, doors that are being held open that would normally be high traffic doors, so that people don't have to grab them. These codes, I think, are going to be calling for, many doors to be on magnetic hold open devices that'll be connected to fire alarm systems, so that they can, again, normally be open. I know if you go to 7-Eleven, you're starting to see these, these kind of, they're, kind of a Z shape, and you can kind of get your arm into it and, and open it that way. So we're going to see, a lot of that sort of thing as easy fixes, for what we're, currently living with. Automated doors, motion sensor, that sort of stuff is important. Going back to bathrooms, again, one of the major ways that COVID is spread is through toilets and through sinks. It's aspirated. When that toilet flushes and there's no seat cover on that toilet, all of that is aspirated into the air. So there are, especially in healthcare facilities, extremely important that the toilet covers be closed. There are toilet covers that are being designed now that they will cause the toilet to flush, and then they will automatically, close, and have that, have that happen. We're all seeing a lot of plexiglass shields, that are being put up, all over the place as a maximum effort to, to protect people. We are seeing portable room dividers, as I had spoken a little bit about.
David, we have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
Can the copper coverings be anodized in order to reduce maintenance?
I would think so. That's all metals seem to be, the best way to go. I guess, anodizing, is an acid etching. But it's certainly, that's going to be better than the typical plastic. Let's take a grab bar or a handrail that we would see, in an assisted living building, or a nursing home or a hospital. That plastic is not going to be your best material. From the data that I've read, that takes up to 14 hours, for that to, to the bacteria itself to die, on that material. One thing
David,
that does, go ahead.
What regulatory changes do you anticipate in independent senior housing?
I think in independent senior housing, I think we're going to be seeing the HVAC criteria that we've been talking about. Most of the independent senior, the independent senior housing, they're built with community rooms, in them, and generally large community rooms. And I think in any kind of a public bathroom, we're going to be seeing all of these things that, that I've been discussing. And as you read the literature, it basically says that, if you have made that life shift where, okay, I no longer have my own house, really the safest place for you to be would be in an independent senior living facility, staying within your own apartment. At least you have the ability to move around. You have the ability to walk outside, get in your car, drive away. So, I think though many of them are heated and cooled with PTAC systems, as the acronym. I'm sure that most people know what those are. And those are anticipated to have these, these ionizing capabilities, within them, in order that that they can act as your barrier. Also, having a way to dehumidify, at the same time, as humidified. So there'd be just like a dehumidifier built into it, where you can set that dehumidifier at some place between 40 and 60. And that will be coming through that PTAC, into your, into your unit. So I think those become a little bit easier. And, then I think in terms of the senior housing, it then just becomes common sense for those, for those people, within it. I think you will not see a lot of carpeting. You'll see, the interlocking vinyl, wood systems on the floors. I know in the senior housing that we're doing, that's what we're putting on the floors everywhere. 100%, in all of the spaces. In the bathrooms, we'll have tile, but we're using large tiles in there rather than smaller tiles. So good question.
David, with increased outside air intake, would thermal transfer systems provide energy conservation?
I'm trying to think when we say thermal transfer. I'm just trying to think of what the person asking the question. Read me the question again, Ken.
With increased outside air intake,
right,
would thermal transfer systems provide energy conservation?
I would think yes. That they would. Because you'd be dealing with that, at the source, and I think that would be preferable to just saying, okay, let's throw more outside air, into it. And you take a day like, well, today's actually a pretty nice day, but you take the days that we've had, over the past couple of weeks where, we've been in the, in the 90s. Yes, I would think that that would help with energy conservation, because I think that's going to be a big conundrum, with dealing, with these viruses, and saying let's not throw the energy code out the window. There's a balancing act that's going to have to happen in there. Another word that I learned was environmental biophilic and exchanges. And what does that mean? That means, having barriers that are actually planters, a trellis, that's on a planter box, done very aesthetically, and that natural plants, that plants will naturally deal with viruses, and have the capability to take those viruses and to deal with those within let's say, senior housing, let's say assisted living, let's say nursing home. Staff, they'd be encouraged to use stairs, rather than using the elevators, so that they're spending most of their time outside of the facility. That way they'd be minimizing, their hand contact with, with most of the facility. One other thing within really, I think all three building types, and it was, I guess it was interesting because before we got started, Graziella was telling me how to share my screen and whatever, and I'm saying, I don't know how to do that, but, I'll be honest with you, when I came to H2M, I didn't know how to send an email. Many people, and again, I'll use my mother-in-law as the example. It's been very difficult for her not being able to communicate, with her family members. And, we're probably going there at least one time a week, and we can't go to see her, but we're allowed to bring things to the front desk, to give her, a piece of computer equipment that she's going to be able to use, that we've shown her, through a Zoom like this. Okay, this is Molly, here's what you're going to do with this. Because it's quite upsetting to her. She's 92 years old and she wants to see her great grandchildren and, find out how the family's doing. So the ability of the resident to have outside communication, and even communication from person to person, room to room, that they can use easily, seems like something that's very simple, but it's important. It's important. So what I want to do is just take a quick, because I've done my 45 minutes, and those of you who know me know I can talk forever. I'm just going to do a quick go through of some of my notes, and things that I think are going to be big. I think UV is going to be very big. I think UV lights that would be on at night, and it's a small part of a bulb, that would sanitize an entire, the entire building, at a point where you don't have, danger from people being exposed to it. And right now vendors are working on it, and it needs to be set up for that. There are mobile UV racks that can be had right now that you can bring into a room at night. They're going to need have dedicated charging stations, not unlike the Tesla cars. We went through really all of the plumbing stuff. I think that you will see that water, drinking fountains as we know them, will be gone. And you'll have bottle filling stations, disposable cups, that sort of things. Within the bathrooms, material changes, I think, are going to be, something that's going to be extremely important. We're not going to see things with crevices and things in them. They're going to all be very, very smooth. One other thing that people don't think about is Legionella. Legionella is a bacteria, and buildings do not do regular flushing of their hot water lines, with hot water. in order to deal with Legionella. So if you have a maintenance sink that's in a closet, and one time every week somebody goes in there to get a mop bucket filled with water, that that entire faucet system is building up Legionella, within it. It's the perfect temperature, for Legionella to grow, and it's a virus. So regular flushing of that is very, very important. We talked about that. Okay, paper towels rather than electric hand dryers. Hopefully you're never in a hospital the next time. Next time you're in a hospital, look for an electric hand dryer. You're not going to find it. They don't exist. They're already within the Fgi guidelines. So paper towels are certainly preferred. And then general things, custodial, wiping down, the UV, kitchens especially, sanitizing constantly. Especially, elevator buttons, handrails, telephones, keyboards. It's not necessarily, touching everything. People don't think about their keyboard. I know, at H2M, if our IT guy comes in and plays with my keyboard, he's got a sanitizer there and he sanitizes my keyboard before he goes out. I mean, we don't think about those sorts of things, and that there are employees working in the company that, that can be spreading, that virus. And enhanced training on of building occupants on hygiene is what we just talked about. And in buildings that are buildings with regular employees that are dealing in healthcare facilities, having staged people coming and going, every 10 minutes have your shift change. So that the shift change doesn't happen all at once and people have time to come in and get themselves properly sanitized before they head back out. So that's a very serious problem, put into, just a little over my 45 minutes. And if there are any other questions, I would gladly answer them. And, hopefully I gave some.
I do have one more.
Sure, go ahead.
Will individual instant hot water heaters be better than central systems in senior housing?
I would say yes. I'm going to be honest with you. That's not something that I've seen, but I would absolutely say yes. I mean, I've certainly, seen everybody, saying, the photosensitive, or foot control, types of, of things, but I haven't heard anyone speak about, instant hot. And I would think for sure that's actually, an excellent, suggestion, because then your hot water is being produced right at the, right at the source. So yeah, I would think so for sure. Yep. Heating and air conditioning, heating and hand washing. Sure.
Thank you, David. It looks like, I'm not sure if anybody has another question. We don't have anything else right now in the Q&A, but I think it was a great presentation, David, to just get some input on what the future will be going with, and especially for us architects, we need to start thinking about how to approach all these issues, so we don't get caught like we got caught right now with a pandemic. So thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge. And if we don't have any more questions, then thank you so much for participating on this webinar. Thank you, Ken, for all your help with the questions. And Anne, you've been busy in the office, but thank you for setting this up. And I hope to see everyone again. Again, keep posted with future events that we're gonna have during September and October. And please reach out to David if you have any other questions or comments. Yep. I'm sure he would be happy.
Ken also, or Anne, and they'd be able to get the questions to me. I would gladly.
Yes, and thank you so much, David. That was really good.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Thank you. And before you close, when you close the session, this was recorded. So it's going to be safe on your on the cloud. So just make sure you say yes to saving so we can post this event on the website later on. I'll make sure we'll retrieve it from the cloud. Okay?
All right. Have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good night, everybody. See you
See you
soon.
tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.